Let's talk about some rich people shit. So you've met a lot of rich people, talked to them, blah, 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 interacted. Give me some insights. What's some rich people stuff that normies don't know about?
Okay, there's a bunch of stuff. So I've had this event called HustleCon. So I've it's been crazy. Like I always tell these people to come an hour early. I don't tell them it's an hour early, but it is. And it's so I can just hang out with them backstage. So I get to it's like my hack to to know these people. So I've had the founders of WeWork, Casper, just 300 different startups that are probably, many of them are huge. And I got to know them and it was pretty shocking. So a few shocking things, a lot of people were in one regard quite normal. They still had doubts. I remember one guy, I think it was Sam Yagan, the guy who started OkCupid and was the CEO of Match.com. I told him I'd pay for his flight, and the flight that he booked was $300 from Chicago round trip. So I guess he flew economy, and he made sure to follow up to make sure that flight got reimbursed. So in some regard, that's pretty normal. In another regard, I noticed that all of them have this attitude of why not me? Why can't I do this? Do you know what I mean? I remember Miguel, the guy who started WeWork, was explaining the vision and how it got started, and I was like, yeah, that all makes sense, but I would never, most people would never have done that. And he was like, well, why shouldn't I have done it? It sounded like a good idea. And I was like, you're right. You're totally right. It's just that emotional thing of why, well, but maybe someone else should do this. A lot of these guys don't have that. What else? I think that there is a threshold to where money doesn't make a difference, and it's probably lower than what most people think. I do think that a lot of these folks, I talked to them a lot about their monthly expenses, and it goes up like crazy, but their happiness doesn't go up like crazy, unfortunately. But that number, I don't know. That number is like the difference between a billion, someone who has a net worth of 1 million liquid and a billion liquid, or a billion total net worth, in terms of happiness, is probably quite minimal. You have more shit, but you also have more shit to worry about, and I think that that's true. What else?
Warren Buffett always talked about, whenever he's talking to a college or something, he's just if you think about it, we're not that different. We use the same phone, we have probably the same size TV, and he's the only difference is whenever I fly, it's in my own little jet. That's sick. Really the only difference. There's not too much more.
Which is definitely cool, but I've flown private because I've had friends that had jets, and it's sick, but I just save a few hours. I mean, that's not it's not, and I don't travel that much, so it's not the biggest difference. What else? I think there was that study that said the $80,000 a year, you're not happy.
I heard that's bullshit.
Yeah, I think that's bullshit. I do think it's $250,000.
You know what it is? You know what I think it really is? I think it's when you make more than your friends.
Well, I would actually say that that's a downside, which is you and I hang out with a lot of interesting, in terms of successful, financially successful people, and I find it to be exhausting, and I have to go and realize that that's not normal, and it's why
is it exhausting?
Well, because the definition of happiness is the gap between expectations and reality, and if your expectation, if you only hang around ballers or something like that, and you're well, I'm not a baller unless I have this much money, and because these 5 of my friends have this much money, then you're going to be unhappy. But then you go hang out with people who don't have that, and you're well, I'm killing it. Why do I need anything else? And I think that it could be really dangerous to hang out with, just to be caught in a stupid bubble, because the financial stuff isn't nearly as important as, unfortunately, I thought it was going to be. But that said, there's this stupid thing is that's silly advice to give, because you can't experience it unless you've actually done it.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds so trite, right? Someone who's maybe wealthy explaining how it doesn't matter. So it is kind of bullshit to be in that perspective.
True. We've also seen a lot of people go from not wealthy to very wealthy. And I will say, I don't think there's a difference in happiness level. I think that people are just kind of for the most part, they're just kind of what they are. And they're just that level, but richer.
When you first met me, I had $18,000 in my bank account, and my rent each month was $400. And I lived in a shithole house that was filthy and disgusting, right?
And you were pretty happy.
I was pretty happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was almost the same. Maybe, I think it's probably a false belief, but there's definitely a chance I was happier. Because I was like, but I was also like 22 and like just like being a wild man.
Yeah, you were in San Francisco. You had a little office here. You were running itch juice out of your apartment. It was exciting times. You had fun people that you were interacting with. Yeah, it was great. I think you're about as happy. Yeah,
I think I'm the same.
Yeah.
Almost the same.
And everyone I know, even some of our neurotic Jewish friends that Noah Kagan, it's like he's the same. I don't think it's any different. I don't think it's any different.
Probably not.
And I think that you're just going to be that way for the rest of your life. I don't know if it changes.
I was just telling David Shapiro this the other day. I was like, I was stressing out. The other day, I bought a $120 bike rack, and then I bought another $40 one, and then I bought a $500 one. And I'm like, I'm going to test all of them because like it hurts me to buy the $500 one, so I'm only going to do it if it's actually the best. And it turns out the $40 one was great. And I'm like, I had so much stress over agonizing this, and I was like, on my credit card, I'm going to have 3 bike racks, and that's like $700 out of my bank account. It kills me, even though I know I'm going to exchange it. But then I was so happy. I'm like, fuck yeah, the cheaper one is the best one. I feel happy. I could save money. It makes me so happy to save and to be frugal. And it makes me so stressed, regardless of what I have or don't have, to spend that extra $60 or whatever it is. Like it keeps me up at night. Like that frugality, like it's so ingrained, I can't break it.
I heard a great quote by Vitalik Buterin, the guy who invented Ethereum. He's really young. He's a pretty young guy, but he said something interesting because he's like a billionaire many times over now. And he said something interesting. He's like, it's more fun to think of money as not something what it can do for you, but the more you have of it, you have to do less stuff. You have to worry about less things. Because if you want a bike rack on your bike and you're poor, you have to think about how much it costs.
But that's my point is I still like agonized over it.
But if you're rich, if you really wanted to get it done, you could just pay someone to do it.
Correct.
You don't have to think about it.
Well, and I can.
You have the
There's
option
something
to.
inside of like some type of guilt where I'm like, it's undisciplined and wasteful to do this if you don't have to. That's how I feel.
I agree. But then if it came really crunch time to it,
yes,
you could just get it done. I remember the first time I felt really rich, and it wasn't anything crazy. It was a friend had a last minute bachelor party in Vegas, like they changed the venue or whatever, and the flight was $900. This was back in the day, and I was just like, I wouldn't even like consider a $900 flight. And then I remember thinking, I was like, oh, I made this much money this month. Like I could easily afford this. And I was like, fuck it, I'll just pay the $900, and just did it. And I went to Vegas that day. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's what that is. That's the cool part about having money. Like I just didn't even have to worry about that.
Yeah, the only like I feel one of the very few things that I do and I don't sweat about it is when I go to I only shop at Whole Foods and I just don't care about what the bill is because I'm like that just genuinely makes me happier. But overspending on other stuff, it hurts me.
I went through the Whole Foods phase one time and I had a $4,000 bill one month and I was like, I have to cut back.
From what?
Dude, I went there 3 times a day because I lived next door to it. So
I don't care. Like that makes me happy. I'm putting it in my body and like the only thing we have is our health. So if it makes me even remotely healthier, I'm into it.